On opening night, the candlelit table reserved for my family remained empty. 8 o'clock turned into 9:15. Then, my phone buzzed. My parents and brother were clinking beers at a cheap sports bar, captioning it as the place where the real future happens. The sadness vanished instantly. They had not forgotten me. They had abandoned me. If they think I am still their financial safety net, they are about to learn the most expensive lesson of their lives. My name is Natalie Watson, and tonight was supposed to be the culmination of 15 years of burns, cuts, and 12-hour shifts that left my feet throbbing long after I had taken off my shoes. It was the grand opening of Marigold House. I had spent the last 6 months bleeding money and sweat into this building in Briar Glen, transforming it from a hollowed-out hardware store into something that breathed. The walls were painted a deep, comforting sage, and the lighting was calibrated to a warm amber glow that made everyone look beautiful. The playlist was a carefully curated selection of low-fidelity jazz, loud enough to fill the silence but soft enough to allow for secrets to be whispered across the white linen tablecloths. Every single detail had to be perfect. The open kitchen was my stage, a gleam of stainless steel where my team moved with the synchronized grace of a ballet troupe. I could smell the brown butter sage sauce bubbling in the pans and the sharp, briny scent of fresh oysters being shucked at the raw bar. The air was thick with the aroma of roasting garlic and promise. But despite the orchestrated chaos of a fully booked opening night, my eyes kept drifting to the one still point in the room, Table 4. It was the best seat in the house. It was a semicircular booth, upholstered in velvet the color of crushed grapes, positioned perfectly to see the kitchen but secluded enough for privacy. On the pristine white tablecloth sat 4 untouched crystal water goblets, 4 heavy silver sets of cutlery, and a small, tasteful card printed on thick cardstock. In elegant calligraphy, it read, "Reserved for family." It was my final olive branch. It was my silent plea for validation. After years of being the invisible Watson, the one who worked while my brother dreamed, I wanted them to see me. I wanted my father, Gordon, to taste my signature risotto and realize that cooking was not just a hobby. I wanted my mother, Diane, to look at the bustling dining room and understand that her daughter had built an empire out of flour and fire. I wanted my brother, Logan, to sit there and perhaps feel a flicker of respect, or at least the realization that he was not the only one capable of success. The clock on the wall above the pass read 8 o'clock. The reservation was for 7:30. I wiped the edge of a plate with a clean towel, my thumb pressing hard against the ceramic. "Service," I called out, sliding a dish of pan-seared scallops toward the expeditor. My voice was steady, but my stomach was beginning to knot. 30 minutes late was fashionable. 45 minutes was rude. By 8:30, the emptiness of Table 4 began to feel heavy. It was a void that seemed to suck the energy out of the room, at least for me. Every time the heavy oak front door swung open, my head snapped up, hope flaring in my chest like a pilot light, only to be extinguished when I saw strangers walking in. My sous chef, Marcus, caught my eye. He did not say anything, but I saw the question in his glance. He looked at the table, then back at me, then quickly focused on garnishing a steak. The waitstaff was starting to notice too. They skirted around the empty booth as if it were a crime scene. I could feel their pity, and it burned worse than any hot oil splash I had ever received. "Chef, do you want us to hold the table?" the hostess asked, coming up to the pass. She looked nervous. "We have a walk-in waiting list of 45 minutes. "Hold it," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking the enamel on my teeth. "They are coming. Traffic on the interstate is probably a nightmare." I lied. We were in North Carolina on a Tuesday. There was no traffic. 9 o'clock arrived with the heaviness of a verdict. The dinner rush was at its peak. The sound of silverware scraping against china and the hum of conversation was deafening. But inside my head, it was dead silent. Table 4 was still empty. The candle in the center of the table had burned down an inch, weeping wax onto the holder. I stepped back from the line, wiping my hands on my apron. "Marcus, take the pass," I said. "I need 2 minutes." I walked into the small office at the back of the kitchen and pulled out my phone. I had not checked it all night because I wanted to be present. I wanted to be ready to greet them. I unlocked the screen. No texts, no missed calls, just the indifferent silence of a device that had not been thought of. Then, I opened social media. The first thing that popped up was a story from Logan. My breath hitched. I tapped the circle, and the screen filled with a video. The lighting was harsh and fluorescent, blue and neon orange. I recognized the place immediately. It was the Gridiron Tap, a sticky-floored sports bar on the other side of town where the beer was cheap and the smell of stale fryer grease clung to your clothes for days. The camera panned around, shaky and loud. There was my father, Gordon, holding up a frosty mug of domestic beer, his face flushed with laughter. There was my mother, Diane, picking at a basket of nuclear orange buffalo wings. And there was Logan, turning the camera on himself, grinning that wide, charming grin that had gotten him out of trouble his entire life. He shouted over the noise of the game on the TV screens behind him, "Real strategy session tonight. Forget the fancy stuff. This is where the empire is built. Right, Pops?" The camera swung back to my father, who clinked his glass against Logan's. "Damn right. To the next big thing." The caption across the bottom of the video read, "Making moves. Family first. Future billionaires." I stared at the screen. The video looped. Making moves. Family first. They were not stuck in traffic. They were not in the hospital. They were not dealing with an emergency. They were 20 minutes away, eating frozen wings and drinking cheap drafts, celebrating one of Logan's imaginary business deals on the very night I was launching the biggest achievement of my life. I waited for the tears. I waited for the familiar crushing weight of disappointment, the urge to curl up and cry because my parents did not love me enough to show up. I waited for the little girl inside me to beg for a scrap of attention, but the tears did not come. Instead, something snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was quiet, like a dry twig breaking under a heavy boot. It was the sound of a tether being severed. For 15 years, I had been their plan B, their safety net. The steady, boring daughter who would always be there to clean up the mess when Logan's latest vision exploded. I had loaned them money I never got back. I had co-signed leases. I had canceled vacations to help them move. I had been the good investment. Tonight, they had made their choice. They chose the dream of a lottery ticket over the reality of my hard work. They chose the bar over my restaurant. "Okay," I whispered to the empty office. I stood up. I felt strangely light. The heavy knot of anxiety in my stomach had dissolved, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I washed my hands at the sink, scrubbing them until the skin was pink. I adjusted my chef's coat, buttoning it all the way to the top. I looked at myself in the small mirror above the desk. My eyes were not wet. They were hard. They looked like flint. I walked back into the kitchen. The noise of the service hit me. But this time, it sounded like music. It sounded like my music. I walked straight out of the kitchen and into the dining room. Heads turned as I moved. I was the chef owner, and this was my domain. I walked directly to table 4. The reserved for family card mocked me in the candlelight. I reached out and picked it up. The cardstock was thick and expensive. I had paid $3 for this single card. I held it up for a second, looking at the calligraphy one last time. Then, with a deliberate, steady motion, I tore it in half. Rip. I put the 2 halves together and tore them again. Rip. I shoved the pieces into my apron pocket. I took a deep breath and looked at the hostess, who was watching me with wide, fearful eyes. "Sarah," I said, my voice cutting through the ambient noise, "give me the marker." She handed me the dry erase marker from her station. I grabbed a blank reserve stand from the counter and wrote on it in bold. Black block letters, "Best table for guests." I placed it on table 4. Then, I walked to the front door and pushed it open. The cool night air hit my face. There was a line of people waiting, hoping for a cancellation. At the back of the line, I saw a couple. They looked young, maybe in their early 20s. The girl was wearing a dress that looked like she had made it herself. and the boy was nervously checking his watch. They were holding hands, looking at the menu posted in the window with a mixture of longing and hesitation. They looked like they were debating if they could afford an appetizer. I walked straight up to them. "Good evening," I said. They jumped a little. "Oh, hi," the boy said, looking embarrassed. "We know it is a long wait. We were just—" "Are you too hungry?" I asked. "Starving," the girl said, smiling shyly. "But we heard it is fully booked." "I have had a cancellation," I said loud enough for the people at the front of the line to hear. "The best table in the house just opened up, and since you two look like you appreciate good food, it is yours, on the house for the first round of drinks." The boy's jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," I said. "Follow me." I led them through the crowded restaurant. As we walked, I felt the energy in the room shift. The staff, who had been walking on eggshells around me, saw the determination in my stride. I pulled out the velvet chair for the young woman. She sat down, looking around the room as if she had just stepped into a palace. "Welcome to Marigold House," I said. "Tonight, you are the VIPs." When I turned around, I saw Marcus standing at the pass, grinning. He started to clap. Then the hostess joined in. Then a table of 4 near the window. Within 10 seconds, the entire restaurant was clapping. It wasn't a polite golf clap. It was a warm, raucous applause that filled the room. The young couple turned beet red, beaming. I did not look at the empty space where my family should have been. That space was gone. It was filled with people who actually wanted to be there. I went back to the kitchen, but before I picked up my knife, I took out my phone one last time. I opened the text thread with my father. The last message was from me, sent 3 hours ago. "Can't wait to see you guys. Valet is out front." I typed a new message. My thumbs moved fast. I did not hesitate. "The table has been given to paying guests. Do not come." "We are full." I hit send. Then I turned my phone off and tossed it into the deep pocket of my chef's pants. "Order in." The machine chattered. "Walking in," I shouted back, my voice booming. 2 risottos, 1 duck breast, 1 sea bass. Let's go." The rest of the night was a blur of adrenaline and perfection. I felt sharper than I had ever felt in my life. Every plate that left the pass was a masterpiece. I was not cooking for approval anymore. I was cooking for myself. I was cooking for the people who showed up. By the time the last guest left and the lights were dimmed, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. My feet were screaming, but my spirit was strangely quiet. I locked the front door, turning the heavy deadbolt with a satisfying click. The restaurant was silent now, save for the hum of the refrigerators. I walked over to table 4. The young couple had left a thank you note on a napkin and a tip that was far too generous for what they probably earned. I sat down at my table and laid my head back against the velvet. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I turned it on. It buzzed immediately, and then it buzzed again, and again. It vibrated in my hand like an angry hornet. I looked at the screen. 19 missed calls, all from Dad. There were 7 text messages. "What do you mean?" "Given away." "We are on our way. Natalie, pick up the phone. You can't embarrass us like this. We are family. Where are you?" "The door is locked. Call me. Now." I looked at the timestamp of the last message. It was sent 5 minutes ago. They had come. They had left the bar when the fun ran out, expecting to waltz into my restaurant for a free late-night meal and a round of applause, only to find the doors locked and their table gone. I imagined my father banging on the glass. I imagined Logan rolling his eyes, blaming me for ruining the vibe. I placed the phone face down on the white tablecloth. The stack of receipts from the night sat next to me. It was a thick, beautiful pile of paper. I had made more money in one night than I had made in 3 months at my last job. The business was real. The success was real. And for the first time in my life, the separation was real too. They thought this was just a tantrum. They thought I was just being emotional, Natalie, the little sister who would cool off by tomorrow and apologize for locking them out. They thought they could call 19 times and I would eventually pick up, apologize, and transfer some money to Logan to make up for hurting his feelings. They were wrong. I looked at the darkened window where the streetlights of Briar Glen cast long shadows. I was not sad. I was prepared. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a declaration of independence. And looking at those 19 missed calls, I knew one thing for certain. The war had just begun. The silence of the empty restaurant after closing time was heavy, but it was not nearly as heavy as the 15 years of noise that had preceded it. I sat there in the dark, rubbing the callus on the heel of my palm that had become permanent around 2012. To the outside world, Marigold House was a sudden success, a flower that had bloomed overnight in Briar Glen. But to me, it was a structure built brick by agonizing brick, mortared with sweat, and the kind of exhaustion that settles into your marrow and never really leaves. People like my brother, Logan, did not understand the concept of the slow burn. For Logan, success was a lottery ticket. It was a viral video. It was a crypto pump and dump scheme that he was always just 5 minutes too late to capitalize on. For me, success was a pot of veal stock that had to simmer for 48 hours, skimmed every 30 minutes, or else it would turn cloudy and bitter. I started in this industry when I was 19, washing dishes at a diner off the interstate because I wanted to buy my own car and stop asking my father for rides. I remember the smell of that dish pit. It was a mixture of bleach, soggy bread, and old ketchup. The steam ruined my skin, and the harsh chemicals made my nails brittle. But I loved the rhythm of it. I loved the instant gratification of taking something filthy and making it clean. While I was scrubbing burnt cheese off sheet pans, Logan was incubating ideas in our parents' basement. That was the phrase my mother, Diane, always used. Logan is incubating. It sounded like he was hatching a golden egg. In reality, he was playing video games and researching how to become a drop-shipping millionaire without ever actually shipping a single box. I missed my 21st birthday party because the sous chef called in sick, and I had to cover the grill station. I missed Thanksgiving 4 years in a row because double time and a half was the only way I could afford culinary school tuition. I remember one specific Thanksgiving vividly. It was 2014. I was working the line at a high-end steakhouse downtown. My arms were covered in tiny burns from the sputtering grease of ribeyes. My phone buzzed in my locker. It was a text from Mom. "Wish you were here." Logan is telling us about his new app idea. It is going to be the Uber for dog walking. I had eaten a cold turkey sandwich over a trash can for my dinner that night. Later, I found out that Logan had pitched the app idea to my father over pumpkin pie and walked away with a $5,000 seed investment. The app never launched. The dog walkers never materialized. The $5,000 vanished into bar tabs and a new wardrobe because, as Logan put it, a CEO has to look the part. That was the dynamic. That was the script we had been handed at birth. Logan was the kite, wild and erratic, needing constant wind and string to keep from crashing. I was the rock. I was the one holding the string. And nobody ever thanks the rock for sitting in the dirt. They called me stable. My father would say it with a tone that sounded like a compliment but felt like a dismissal. "Natalie is our steady girl. She is fine. We do not have to worry about Natalie." Being stable meant I was boring. Being stable meant I did not need help. Being stable meant I was the designated ATM for the visionary who could not manage a checking account. The requests for money started small. $20 for gas, $50 for a phone bill. Then they grew. When I was 26, I had just made sous chef at a reputable bistro. I was making decent money for the first time in my life, saving every penny for the dream of Marigold House. Logan called me on a Tuesday. I could hear the panic in his voice, the performance of distress that he had perfected. He was 2 months behind on rent for his loft office, which was just an overpriced apartment, and the landlord was threatening eviction. "It is just a bridge loan, Nat," he had said. "I have a check clearing from a client on Friday. I just need $2,000 to get the guy off my back. I swear on my life, you will have it back by the weekend." I sent the money. I sent it because I had been trained to believe that family helps family. Friday came and went. Sunday passed. When I called him, he sent me to voicemail. When I finally cornered him at a family barbecue 2 weeks later, he acted offended that I even brought it up. God, Natalie, why are you so obsessed with money? He had sneered, holding a beer my father had bought him. The client delayed the transfer. You know how business works. Stop being such a miser. You will get it. I never got it. And it was not just the $2,000. Over the years, I paid for his car insurance 3 times so his license would not be suspended. I paid for a networking trip to Austin that turned out to be a bachelor party. I covered the deductible when he backed his car into a mailbox while texting. All of it was framed as a loan. All of it was written off by my parents as helping your brother find his footing. But the moment that truly severed the emotional artery happened 3 years ago. I had found the perfect location for Marigold House. It was a different building then, a small corner lot with great bones. I had the business plan, I had the menu, I had 60% of the capital saved from a decade of hoarding my tips and salary. I just needed a cosigner for a small business loan to cover the renovation costs. My credit was perfect, but the banks wanted a guarantor because restaurants are high risk. I went to my father, I brought a binder, I had spreadsheets projecting revenue, food costs, and labor. I had treated it like a professional pitch. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he had handed Logan check after check for ideas that existed only in the ether. Gordon flipped through the binder without really reading it. He took a sip of his coffee and looked at me with a pitying smile. "Honey," he said, "this is very impressive. Really, you are a great cook, but a restaurant, it is a dying industry. 90% fail in the first year." "I know the risks, Dad," I said. "That is why I have this plan. I just need a signature. I will make the payments. You will never have to pay a cent." He sighed and closed the binder. "I can't do it, Natalie." "Why not?" I asked, feeling my chest tighten. "You co-signed for Logan's lease. You co-signed for his car." "That is different," he said, his voice hardening. "Logan is on the verge of something big with this crypto mining venture. I need to keep my credit utilization low so I can help him leverage some equipment next month. If I co-sign for you, it ties up my line of credit." I sat there, stunned. He was reserving his creditworthiness for a gambling addiction masquerading as a business strategy, while denying his daughter who had a 15-year track record of relentless, proven hard work. "You are betting on the wrong horse, Dad," I said quietly. "It is not about betting," he snapped. "It is about needs. You have a job. You are stable. Logan needs this push to get started. Why can't you be supportive?" That was the day I stopped asking, and that was the day I started studying. I realized then that if I was going to build anything, I had to build it so perfectly, so legally airtight, that they could never touch it. I stopped reading cookbooks before bed and started reading contract law. I bought books on corporate structure, liability, and commercial leasing. I learned the difference between an LLC and an S-corp. I learned about piercing the corporate veil. I learned how to draft an operating agreement that gave the owner absolute control. I became obsessed with documentation. I bought a black moleskin notebook. It became my Bible of grievances. I called it my receipt book. Every time Logan asked for money, I wrote it down. Date, time, amount, the lie he told to get it. March 3rd, 2021, $400, claimed he needed new tires. Saw him on Instagram at a concert the next night. August 12th, 2022, $1,200, rent assistance, promised repayment in 30 days, defaulted. I kept screenshots of every text message. I saved every Venmo transaction history. I recorded the dates of the family dinners where my mother made me pay the bill because, you know, things are tight for your brother right now. I was building a case file, even if I did not know exactly who the judge would be. And then came tonight, the grand opening. For weeks, they had been making noises about how proud they were. Logan had been talking about how Marigold House would be a great family hangout spot. My father had joked about having his own reserved stool at the bar, but when the clock struck 9 and the table remained empty, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. It was not just that they were selfish. It was not just that they were lazy. It was that they were jealous. They did not want me to succeed. Not really. Because if I succeeded, if I became a legitimate, high-earning, celebrated business owner, it would destroy the narrative they had built their lives around. It would prove that Logan was not a victim of bad luck, but a failure of character. It would prove that my parents had bet their retirement and their emotional energy on a mirage, while ignoring the oasis right in front of them. My success was an insult to their judgment, so they abandoned me on my biggest night. They went to a dive bar to toast to a fantasy, because facing the reality of my achievement was too painful for their egos. They wanted me to be the stable cook who made them dinner on Sundays and loaned Logan rent money. They did not want me to be a CEO. I looked down at the black notebook sitting on the desk in my office. I ran my hand over the cover. They thought I was still the girl who craved their approval. They thought I would call them tomorrow, crying, begging them to explain why they didn't come, giving them the power to hurt me all over again. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The Natalie who begged for love died somewhere between the dinner rush and the moment I saw that Instagram story. I picked up a pen and opened the notebook to a fresh page. I wrote today's date, December 9th, grand opening, no show, 19 missed calls, attempted emotional manipulation. I closed the book with a snap. If they wanted to drag me back down into the mud with them, they were going to be disappointed. I had spent 15 years climbing out of that hole. I had built a castle of light, and I was going to stand in the center of it. If they wanted to come for me, they would have to swim through the light, and looking at the way they lived their lives, hiding in the dim glow of dive bars and false promises, I knew the light was the one thing they could not survive. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and set the alarm. The red light of the security system blinked to life, a steady, unblinking eye watching over what was mine, not ours, mine. I walked out into the cool night air, leaving the ghost of the family I thought I had behind the locked doors of Marigold House. Tomorrow, the bank would open at 9 in the morning, and I had some very specific instructions for my account manager. The stable girl was gone. The chef was in charge. The morning sun hit the polished concrete floors of Marigold House at exactly 10 o'clock, casting long, sharp shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The air smelled of roasting coffee beans and the yeasty sour tang of sourdough starter proving in the back. It was my favorite time of day. The chairs were overturned on the tables, legs pointing up like a forest of dead trees, and the kitchen was quiet, except for the rhythmic thud-hiss-thud of my knife working through a crate of fennel. I was in the zone. My mind was a calm, flat lake. Then the front door chimed. It was not the gentle tinkle of a customer hesitating at the threshold. It was a forceful shove. The heavy oak door banged against the stopper. I did not look up from my cutting board. I knew that walk. I knew the heavy, confident heel strike of a man who believed the ground should be grateful to receive his weight. "Coffee," a voice boomed from the other side of the pass. "Black, 2 sugars, and do not give me that artisanal acidic stuff, just regular coffee." I finished slicing the bulb of fennel, wiped my knife, and set it down with a deliberate click. I looked up. Gordon Watson stood there. My father. He looked like he had slept in his suit. His tie was loosened, the top button of his shirt undone, and there were dark, bruised circles under his eyes that no amount of bravado could hide. But he was smiling. It was that wide, teeth-baring smile he used on bank tellers and potential investors, the one that stopped reaching his eyes about 20 years ago. He did not look at the flowers on the counter. He did not look at the awards I had framed on the wall. He did not look at the menu. He looked at me, scanning my face, checking for cracks. He was checking the machinery to make sure it was still operational. "Good morning, Dad," I said. My voice was level. I did not move to get the coffee. "What a night." "Huh?" He laughed, a booming sound that echoed hollowly in the empty dining room. He leaned his elbows on the stainless steel pass, invading my workspace. "I tell you, Natalie, Things are moving. Things are really moving. I know. We missed the dinner, but you understand. When opportunity knocks, you do not just open the door, you kick it down. He waited for me to nod. He waited for me to say, "Of course, Dad, I understand." I stayed silent. I picked up a towel and slowly wiped the counter. He cleared his throat, a little irritation flickering in his gaze. Logan met some serious players at the tap last night, real heavy hitters, venture capital types. They love his energy. They see the vision. We were up until 4 in the morning strategizing. It is happening. Nat, the big one? That is nice, I said. I served 120 covers last night. We turned the tables 3 times. He waved his hand dismissively, as if I had just told him I tied my shoes. Great. Good for you. Keeping the lights on. That is important. But listen, I did not come here to talk about salads. He straightened up, adjusting his lapels. Here it comes. I thought, the wind-up. These investors, he said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. They are ready to commit, but they need to see skin in the game. They need to know the initial round is secured. It is a leverage thing. You know business. I did not know his business, because his business was a fiction, but I knew exactly where this was going. How much? I asked. I did not ask what for. I did not ask who are they. I went straight to the bottom line because that was the only language Gordon Watson spoke fluently. He blinked, surprised by my directness, but he recovered quickly. He took it as a sign of submission. We need to show liquidity. We are looking at a bridge round. $75,000. I stopped wiping the counter. $75,000. It was said so casually. He might as well have asked for a side of ranch dressing. 75,000, I repeated. It is an investment, Natalie, he said quickly, his hands moving in the air, sculpting invisible shapes of wealth. Logan is putting you on the cap table, preferred stock. When this thing goes Series A in 6 months, that 75,000 turns into $500,000. Easy. We are doing you a favor. Really. Keeping it in the family before we open it up to the sharks. I looked at him. I looked at this man who had not called me on my birthday in 3 years, unless he needed something. I looked at the man who had ordered a beer while I was tearing up a reservation card with his name on it. No, I said. The silence that followed was absolute. A fly buzzed against the window pane. Gordon's smile faltered. It twitched at the corners. Excuse me. No, I said again. I do not have $75,000 for Logan, and even if I did, I would not give it to him. He laughed. A short, nervous bark. Stop joking. I saw the place last night. I saw the line out the door. I saw the receipts on the table through the window. You are flush. Do not lie to me. That money is for vendors, I said. It is for payroll. It is for the loan I took out because you would not co-sign one. His face darkened. The salesman mask dropped, revealing the bully underneath. This is not about the past. Natalie, this is about the future. Family is a team. A team, when one player has the ball, the others block. Logan has the ball. You are the blocker. That is your role. You have always been the blocker. A team. I walked around the pass, stepping out of the kitchen and into the dining room so there was nothing between us. A team implies shared effort. A team implies mutual support. Which team is this? Dad. The one where the captain never shows up to the game. The one where the captain sits in a bar and mocks the goalie while she is saving the match. We were working, he shouted. His voice cracked. Do not be selfish. You have this place. You are comfortable. Your brother is out there trying to build a legacy, and you are hoarding cash like a miser. I am not hoarding, I said. I am earning. There is a difference. It is $75,000, he yelled, his face turning a mottled red. You can get a line of credit. You can take a second mortgage. You figure it out. That is what you do. You figure things out so Logan can fly. That is the deal. That is not a deal, I said. That is a parasitism. He stepped closer, invading my personal space. He smelled of stale beer and expensive cologne, masking a lack of shower. You listen to me. You are nothing without this family. You think you are some big shot because you can cook a steak? It is just a restaurant. Natalie. It is food. It goes in one end and out the other. It means nothing. Logan is building technology. He is building the future. You are just the help. The words hung in the air. Just the help. It was the quiet part said out loud. It was the truth he had been hiding behind stable and reliable all these years. I did not scream. I did not cry. I felt a cold, metallic calm settle over me. I walked over to the hostess stand. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the black moleskin notebook, my receipt book. I walked back to him and slammed it onto the nearest table. The sound was like a gunshot. Read it, I said. He looked at the book, then at me. What is this? Read it, I commanded. My voice was not loud, but it had an edge that made him flinch. He opened the book randomly. March 4th, 2019. I recited from memory before he could even focus his eyes. Logan's DUI lawyer, $5,000. You told me it was for a medical emergency. I paid it directly to the firm. He flipped the page, his hands shaking slightly. October 10th, 2021. I continued. Rent for the penthouse he needed for Image, $8,000. You promised to pay me back when your tax return came. You never did. I stepped closer. January 1st, 2023. The crypto wallet hack. You said he lost everything. You made me liquidate my IRA, $12,000. I found out later he spent it on a trip to Tulum with his girlfriend. Gordon slammed the book shut. That is enough. You kept score. You kept a ledger against your own flesh and blood. I kept receipts, I corrected him. Because I knew this day would come. I knew you would come in here, stand in the house that I built, and tell me that I owe you more. I picked up the book and held it to my chest like a shield. I have done the math, Dad. Between the loans, the bailouts, and the stolen opportunities, this family owes me $142,000, and that is without interest. Gordon stared at me. His mouth opened and closed. He looked smaller suddenly. The suit looked cheaper. The bravado had evaporated, leaving behind a desperate, aging man who realized his credit limit had finally been reached. You are ungrateful, he hissed, after everything we did for you. You did nothing for me, I said. You did everything to me. I pointed to the door. Get out. You can't kick me out, he sputtered. I am your father. This is a place of business, I said. And you are loitering. The table you want requires a reservation, and the investment you want requires a business plan, not a hangover. He looked around the empty restaurant, looking for an audience, looking for someone to side with him, but there was only me, and the silent, judging tables. You will regret this, he said, pointing a shaking finger at me. When Logan is on the cover of Forbes, do not come crawling back. If Logan ever makes the cover of Forbes, I said, I will frame it and hang it in the bathroom. Now, get out before I call the police and have you trespassed. He stared at me for one long, hateful second. Then he turned on his heel. He did not walk out with the same swagger he had walked in with. He shuffled. He looked like an old man who had just been told the bank was foreclosing on his delusions. The door swung shut behind him. The bell chimed. A cheerful, final sound. I stood there for a moment, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally saying the words. I looked at the black notebook in my hands. I walked over to the trash can behind the bar. I hovered over it for a second, thinking about throwing it away. Then I stopped. No. The war wasn't over. Gordon had retreated, but he wasn't defeated. He would go back to Logan. They would spin this. They would come up with a new angle. They would get desperate. And desperate men are dangerous. I put the notebook back in the drawer of the hostess stand and locked it. Privilege, I whispered to the empty room. Not a birthright. I walked back to the kitchen, picked up my knife, and went back to the fennel. The rhythm returned. Thud his thud. But this time, the knife felt lighter, The air felt cleaner, and for the first time in 15 years, I did not feel like I was cooking for a ghost. I was cooking for myself. The war did not begin with a scream or a lawsuit. It began with the silence of a printer that should have been screaming. It was Friday, 48 hours after I had kicked my father out of my restaurant. Friday nights in the culinary world are the championship games. You prep for war. You sharpen your knives until they can split a hair. You stock the low boys with enough mise en place to feed an army. By 4 in the afternoon, the reservation system on the iPad was a solid block of blue. We were fully booked. Every 2-top, every 4-top, every seat at the bar was spoken for. I had ordered an extra 10 pounds of Chilean sea bass. I had my pastry chef, Elena, prep 20 extra chocolate soufflés because the pre-orders were off the charts. The kitchen was vibrating with that specific electric hum that happens before a crush. "We are going to get crushed tonight, chef," Marcus said. Tying his apron tight, he was grinning. Cooks love the crush. "Stay sharp," I said. "Check the sanitizer buckets. I want this service flawless." But at 6 o'clock, when the doors opened for the first seating, something strange happened. The table for 6 in the alcove. No show. The table for 4 by the window. No show. The 2-top near the kitchen. No show. At first, I thought it was just bad luck. People get stuck in traffic. Babysitters cancel. But by 6:30, the pattern was impossible to ignore. The iPad showed confirmed for all these reservations, yet the dining room was at 30% capacity. I walked over to the hostess stand. Sarah looked like she was about to cry. "I do not understand. Chef," she stammered. "I am calling the 6:30 reservations to check if they are running late, but the numbers are dead, or they go straight to a generic voicemail." I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. "Let me see the system." I scrolled through the list. The names looked normal at a glance: John Smith, Mike Davis, Sarah Jones. But when I looked closer, I saw the timestamps. All these reservations had been made online between 2 and 4 in the morning the previous night. They were booked in rapid succession, gobbling up our prime inventory. "They are bots," I whispered. Or if not bots, manual labor. Someone had stayed up all night creating fake accounts to block real customers from booking tables. "Open the floor," I ordered, my voice tight. "Take walk-ins. Anyone who looks hungry outside. Bring them in. Ignore the reservation list." But the damage was already done. We had turned away legitimate calls all day because the system said we were full. Now, I had 20 pounds of sea bass that was ticking toward the trash can. That was $600 of inventory rotting because of a phantom rush. Then the phones started buzzing. Not the landline, the personal phones. First Sarah's, then Marcus's, then mine. "Chef," Marcus said, looking at his screen, his face pale. "Have you seen Yelp or Google reviews?" "I do not read reviews during service," I snapped. "You need to see this." I wiped my hands and took his phone. 1 star, posted 10 minutes ago. Saw a rat the size of a cat in the kitchen. Disgusting. The owner laughed when I pointed it out. Stay away. 1 star. Posted 12 minutes ago. Food poisoning immediately after eating the scallops. I am writing this from the emergency room. Health department needs to shut this place down. 1 star. Posted 15 minutes ago. The head chef, Natalie, screamed at a waiter and called him a racial slur. Horrible atmosphere. Vile woman. I scrolled. There were 20 of them. 21-star reviews appearing in the span of 30 minutes. The language was specific. It was vicious. And it was coordinated. "They are fake," Sarah said, looking over my shoulder. "We have not even served scallops tonight," but the customers did not know that. I looked out into the dining room. A couple at table 7, real customers, were looking at their phones. I saw the woman whisper something to the man. She pointed at her screen. His face dropped. He put his napkin on the table. They stood up. They had not even ordered yet. I watched them walk to the door. I could not stop them. What would I say? "Please do not believe the internet, chef," Marcus asked quietly. "What do we do?" "Do we reply?" "No," I said. My voice was ice. Do not engage. Do not reply to a single one. If you argue with a pig in the mud, you both get dirty. But the pig likes it. I went into the office and pulled up the back end of the review sites. I started taking screenshots. I noted the timestamps. I noted the syntax. Disgusting. Vile. Shut this place down. These weren't just random trolls. This was a targeted hit, and I recognized the tone. The review about the racial slur used a specific phrase, ungrateful tyrant. That was my father's vocabulary. The review about the rat used the phrase, health hazard trap. That sounded like Logan trying to sound like a lawyer. They were trying to kill my reputation before I could even get off the ground, but the real blow came at 8 o'clock. The service was limping along. The mood in the kitchen was somber. We were cooking, but the joy was gone. We felt watched. The back door, the delivery entrance, opened. I turned, expecting a late vegetable delivery. Instead, a man in a navy blue windbreaker walked in. He wore a lanyard with a laminated badge. He carried a clipboard and a digital thermometer. "Health inspector," he announced. The kitchen stopped. The hiss of the pans seemed to die down. "We were inspected 2 weeks ago for the opening permit," I said, stepping forward. I kept my hands visible, my posture open. "We scored a 100. "I know," the inspector said. He did not look friendly. "But we received a credible complaint, a specific tip about a rodent infestation and improper refrigeration of seafood. The complainant claimed to be a former employee who saw it firsthand." "I have not fired anyone yet," I said. "So there are no former employees." "The complaint said it was a family member who had access to the kitchen," he said, looking me in the eye. The knife in my heart twisted. A family member. They had called the city. They had actually called the government on me. This wasn't just a prank. This was an attempt to revoke my license. If I failed this, they would shut my doors tonight. "Check everything," I said. I stepped aside and swept my arm toward the kitchen. "Check the drains. Check the gaskets. Check the temp logs. My kitchen is an open book." I watched him work. It was agonizing. He was thorough. He pulled the shelving units away from the walls to check for droppings. He shone a high-powered flashlight into the motors of the refrigerators. He stuck his thermometer into the hollandaise sauce, the chicken stock, the raw tuna, 38 degrees, 40 degrees, 145 degrees. Perfect, perfect, perfect. The staff stood frozen against the prep tables. I could see the terror in Elena's eyes. A surprise inspection on a Friday night is a death sentence for a disorganized kitchen. But I was not disorganized. I was Natalie Watson. I had spent 15 years being the one who cleaned up the mess, which meant I never left a mess of my own. The inspector opened the walk-in freezer. He checked the dates on the labels. He checked the rotation. FIFO. First in, first out. Everything was labeled with blue tape, written in my sharp, obsessive handwriting. He came out after 45 minutes. He clicked his pen and finished writing on his form. The dining room was buzzing with whispers. The guests had seen the inspector walk through. The rumor mill was already churning. Why is the inspector here on a Friday? Must be something bad. The inspector ripped the pink copy off the clipboard. "I apologize for the disruption." "Chef," he said. His tone had changed. The suspicion was gone, replaced by a grudging respect. "This is one of the cleanest kitchens I have seen in this county. Your temperature logs are immaculate. I found absolutely no evidence of rodents or pests." He handed me the paper. Score 100. "The complaint was clearly malicious," he added quietly. "We get these sometimes. Rival restaurants. Angry exes. I will note in the file that the tip was unfounded, so they cannot pull this again next week." "Thank you," I said. I took the paper. My hand did not shake. He left. "All right, everyone." I clapped my hands, breaking the spell of fear in the room. "You heard the man. We are perfect. Now let's get that food out. We have guests to feed." The team rallied. We pushed through the rest of the service, but the damage was done. We had lost half our expected revenue due to the fake reservations. We had lost customers who walked out because of the reviews. and the sight of the health inspector had cast a pall over the evening that no amount of free dessert could fix. When the last plate was washed and the staff had gone home, I sat in the dark office again. I pulled up the security camera feed. I have cameras inside, but I also have one external camera facing the street, mostly to watch my employees' cars for safety. I rewound the footage to 7 o'clock. There, across the street, standing under the awning of the dry cleaner, was a figure. He was wearing a hoodie, but I knew the posture. I knew the way he leaned against the wall, one foot propped up. It was Logan. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was looking at Marigold House. I watched the footage and fast forward. He stood there for 2 hours. He watched the couple leave after reading the reviews. He watched the health inspector go in. He watched the lack of a line out the door. And then, around 9 o'clock, he took out his phone. He made a call. On the screen, he was laughing. I could see his head tilt back. He was counting the empty tables through the window. It wasn't a drunken mistake. It wasn't a lash out. This was a campaign. Gordon had given the order. Logan was the foot soldier. They were not trying to get money from me anymore. That phase was over. They were trying to destroy the asset. If they could not own Marigold House, they were going to burn it to the ground so that I would have nothing left but them. They wanted me destitute. They wanted me broken so I would have to crawl back to the safety of the family and resume my role as the servant. I zoomed in on Logan's grainy face on the monitor. "You are counting tables. Logan," I whispered to the screen. "But you should be counting your days." I saved the clip. I exported the log of the fake reservations. I took screenshots of the reviews with the matching timestamps. I scanned the health inspection report noting the malicious complaint. I created a new folder on my laptop. I named it Evidence Phase 01. They thought this was a game of bullying. They thought I would crack under the pressure of bad Yelp reviews and a scary man with a clipboard. They forgot that I thrived in the heat. They forgot that the kitchen is a place where you get burned every day, and you learn to like the scar tissue. I picked up my phone and dialed a number. It was late, but I knew he would be awake. "Hello," a sleepy voice answered. It was Arthur, my lawyer. He was expensive, aggressive, and specialized in corporate litigation. "Arthur, it is Natalie," I said. "I need you to file a subpoena for the IP addresses associated with 20 Google accounts, and I need a cease and desist drafted for harassment, but do not send it yet." "Natalie," he sounded confused. "What is happening?" "My family declared war," I said, "and I'm about to nuke their supply lines." I looked at Logan on the screen one last time before closing the laptop. Let them play their games. Let them send their inspectors. I was just getting started. It was 2 a.m. on Sunday. The kitchen was finally silent, stripped down to its stainless steel bones. The rubber floor mats had been hosed down and hung up to dry, dripping water onto the concrete like a slow, rhythmic clock. I was the only one left in Marigold House. The dishwasher had clocked out an hour ago, and Marcus had left with a high five that felt more like a survivor's embrace. We had survived the Friday night sabotage. Saturday had been better, mostly because I had spent $3,000 on a rush social media campaign to counter the fake reviews, posting videos of our pristine kitchen and happy guests. It was an expensive bandage, but it had stopped the bleeding. I was sitting in the office, staring at the profit and loss statement on my laptop screen. The numbers were good, but the margins were thin. They always are in this business. But now, with the legal fees I was about to incur, those margins were going to vanish. Then came the knock. It was not at the heavy front door where customers entered. It was at the back delivery door, the steel slab that opened into the alleyway where the dumpsters lived. My stomach tightened. No vendors delivered at 2 on a Sunday morning. I stood up and grabbed the heavy Maglite flashlight I kept on the desk. It was heavy enough to crack a skull if necessary. I walked through the dark kitchen, my footsteps silent on the concrete. I checked the security monitor by the door. A woman was standing there. She was shivering, wrapped in a trench coat that looked too thin for the December chill. She kept looking over her shoulder at the alley entrance. It was Mia. Mia was Logan's on-again, off-again girlfriend. She was also his chief marketing officer, a title that meant she ran his Instagram account and designed the logos for his failed ventures. She was usually impeccable, hair blown out, makeup contoured to perfection, exuding the same desperate aspiration that radiated off my brother. Tonight, she looked like a wreck. Her mascara was smeared, and her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. I unlocked the deadbolt and cracked the door open, keeping the chain attached. "Mia," I asked, "what are you doing here?" "Natalie, please," she whispered. Her voice was shaking. "Let me in. I cannot be seen here." I hesitated. Was this another trap? Was she wearing a wire? Was she here to plant rats in my pantry? "Please," she begged, and a tear tracked through the foundation on her cheek. "I have receipts." That word unlocked the door. I undid the chain and stepped back. She slipped inside, bringing the smell of cold rain and nervous sweat with her. I locked the door behind her and led her into the kitchen. I did not offer her a seat. I did not offer her water. I leaned against the prep table, crossed my arms, and waited. "Talk," I said. Mia was trembling. She reached into her oversized bag and pulled out a manila envelope. Her hands were shaking so bad she almost dropped it. "He is going to kill me if he finds out I am here," she said. "Who, Logan?" "No," she said, looking up at me with wide, terrified eyes. "Not Logan. The guys he owes." I frowned. "The investors." Mia let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "They are not investors, Natalie. There is no company. There never was." I felt the ground shift slightly under my feet. "What do you mean?" "The tech startup, the blockchain logistics platform, the next Amazon. It is all fake," she said, the words spilling out of her like vomit. "It is just a slide deck. He paid a graphic designer on Fiverr $50 to make the logo. There is no code. There is no beta test. There is no incorporation paper. It is smoke. It is all just smoke." I stared at her. I knew Logan was a dreamer. I knew he was lazy, but I thought he was at least trying to build something, however misguided. "So the meeting at the Gridiron Tap," I said slowly. "The men in suits, the toasts, loan sharks," Mia whispered. "High interest, short-term lenders who operate out of a shell company in New Jersey. They lend cash to desperate people who cannot get bank loans. Logan borrowed $50,000 from them 6 months ago to maintain appearances. He spent it on the lease for his apartment, the lease on the BMW, and dinners to impress people who do not matter." She took a breath, her chest heaving. "The note came due last week. That is why they were at the bar. They were not celebrating a deal. They were giving him a deadline. They told him if he did not have $75,000, the principal plus the vigorish by next Monday, they were going to start taking assets. And since Logan does not own anything real, they are going to hurt him," I finished. "Yes," she said. "And he is terrified. That is why Gordon came here. That is why they need your money. They are not trying to launch a business. They are trying to save Logan's kneecaps." I looked at the stainless steel of my kitchen. I thought about Gordon standing where I was standing, demanding $75,000 as an investment. He knew. My father knew his son was in debt to criminals, and instead of selling his own house or his own car, he came to rob me. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "You are his partner." "Because I am listed as the CFO on the fake documents he gave them," Mia said, her voice rising in panic. "If this goes south, if the police get involved, or if these guys come looking for collateral, I am in the crosshairs too. I cannot go to jail. Natalie, I cannot get hurt. I tried to tell Logan to come clean, but he and Gordon, they have a plan." "A plan." "To take this place," she said. She pushed the manila envelope across the stainless steel table. "Open it." I opened the envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a stack of printed screenshots. I picked up the screenshots first. They were text messages between Logan and Gordon. "Gordon, she kicked me out. She is tighter than a drum. Logan, I told you. We need to stop asking and start taking." Gordon, "The health inspector thing didn't work. The report came back clean." Logan, Then we go nuclear. We need her signature on a guarantor form. If we can get her to sign the family trust document, we can leverage the restaurant equipment against the loan. I felt a cold rage spreading through my chest. It was not the hot, fiery anger of the other night. This was absolute zero. They were conspiring to trick me into signing away the deed to my ovens, my mixers, my tables, the tools of my trade to pay off a gambling debt. There is audio, Mia said, on the drive, from last night, after the inspection failed. I walked to the office, plugged the drive into my laptop, and clicked the file named Strategy Session Deck 10.3. The sound was muddy at first, the clinking of glass, the hum of a car engine. They were in Gordon's car. "She is not breaking," Logan's voice filled the small office. He sounded petulant, like a child denied a toy. The bad reviews just made her post more food photos, and the inspector actually complimented her kitchen. "Who does that?" "She is obsessed," Gordon's voice replied. It was calm, chillingly so. "She has always been obsessed with rules. That is her weakness. She thinks if she follows the rules, she is safe." "So what do we do, Dad?" "The guys want their money on Tuesday." There was a pause on the recording. I could hear the turn signal clicking. Click-clack, click-clack. "If she is not scared of the health department," Gordon said, his voice dropping an octave, "then we hit the structural points, the bank, the liquor license, the landlord. We do not need her to give us the money anymore. Logan, we need to create a situation where she has to bring us in to save her." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we look into her lease agreement. I know the landlord, old Mr. Henderson. He is shaky. If he hears that Marigold House is being investigated for, say, money laundering or serving minors, he might panic. If she loses the lease, the business valuation tanks, we swoop in, offer to take over the management to stabilize things, and we put the assets under the holding company." "You want to frame her?" Logan asked. He sounded excited. "I want to discipline her," Gordon said. "She forgot who made her. She thinks she is a big shot because she can cook. We provided the roof over her head for 18 years. We are just collecting the rent that is due." The recording ended. The silence in the office was deafening. I sat there, looking at the waveform on the screen. We provided the roof over her head, as if parenting was a transaction, as if feeding your child was a loan that accrued interest. I looked at Mia. She was hugging herself, waiting for my reaction. She expected me to scream. She expected me to cry. She expected the heartbroken daughter. But the daughter had left the building days ago. The only person sitting in this chair was the chef owner. "Is this everything?" I asked. My voice was steady. "Yes," Mia said. "The texts, the recording, and the schedule of when the loan sharks are coming to collect. It is all there." "Why did you record them?" I asked. "Insurance," Mia said honestly. "In case they tried to blame me for the fraud, I wanted proof that I was just following orders." "You are just as bad as them," I said. "But you are useful." Mia flinched, but she nodded. "I know. I just want out. Natalie, I am leaving town tomorrow. I am going to my sister's in Ohio. I just wanted to give you this before I left, so you know what is coming." "Thank you," I said. It was not a warm thank you. It was the thank you you give to a vendor who finally delivers the right product after messing up 3 times. "What are you going to do?" Mia asked. I stood up and pulled the flash drive out of the computer. I held it in my hand. It felt light, plastic, insignificant, but it was a nuclear warhead. "Gordon said something interesting," I said, staring at the black screen of the laptop. "He said he wants to create a situation where I have to bring them in to save me." I turned to Mia. "He thinks I am trapped in here with him," I said. "He does not realize that he just locked himself in a cage with a tiger." "They are going to try to revoke your liquor license next," Mia warned. "Gordon knows a guy on the board." "Let them try," I said. "They are playing checkers. They are moving pieces around a board they do not understand. They think this is a family dispute. They think it is emotional." I walked Mia to the back door. The rain had stopped, but the alley was slick and dark. "One more thing," I said. hand on the doorknob. "Does Logan know you are here?" "No," she said. "He thinks I am at the store buying cigarettes." "Good. Keep it that way. Let him think everything is going according to plan. Let him think I am unsuspecting. Let him think I am just the stable sister who is about to get a lesson in discipline." Mia looked at me with a strange expression. It was fear, but it was mixed with awe. "You have changed, Natalie." "No," I said. "I have just finally started cooking with the right ingredients." I opened the door. "Go to Ohio, Mia, and do not come back." She ran out into the night, her heels clicking on the wet asphalt. I watched her go until she turned the corner. I locked the door. I threw the deadbolt. I engaged the security bar. I walked back to the office and looked at the flash drive. Gordon wanted to hit the bank. He wanted to hit the landlord. He wanted to frame me for crimes I did not commit to devalue my business so he could steal it and feed it to the sharks to save his golden boy. They did not want $75,000. That was the small ask. That was the mercy tax. They wanted Marigold House. They wanted the equity. They wanted the years of my life I had poured into these walls. They wanted to strip me clean, leave me with nothing, and tell themselves they were doing me a favor by managing my failure. They wanted to eat me alive. I picked up my phone. It was 3 a.m, but I didn't care. I sent a text to my lawyer. "Arthur, I have evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, and malicious interference with business operations. I also have proof of a predatory lending scheme involving my brother. Clear your schedule for Monday morning. We are not filing a cease and desist anymore." I put the phone down. I wasn't tired. My mind was racing, connecting dots, formulating a menu of consequences. Gordon wanted a war of attrition. He wanted to attack my supply lines. Fine, but he forgot the most important rule of the kitchen. If you can't stand the heat, you don't turn up the gas. You get out. And I was about to turn the gas all the way up. Monday morning arrived with the color of slate, gray and unyielding. It was the kind of morning that demanded coffee and clarity. I had not slept much, but I was not tired. My exhaustion had calcified into something harder, something useful. I was no longer the daughter waiting for approval. I was the CEO of a corporation under siege, and it was time to fortify the castle. At 8 in the morning, I walked into the law offices of Arthur Sterling. I did not go alone. I brought the black moleskin notebook, my receipt book, and the flash drive Mia had given me. I also brought a new addition to my team, Evelyn, a forensic accountant who I had hired at double her hourly rate to start immediately. Arthur looked at the items on his mahogany conference table. He was a man who had seen messy divorces and hostile takeovers. But as he listened to the audio recording of my father and brother plotting to frame me for fraud, his eyebrows climbed higher and higher until they nearly vanished into his hairline. "This is not just a domestic dispute, Natalie," Arthur said, leaning back in his leather chair. "This is conspiracy. They are discussing manufacturing evidence to trigger a default on your lease in the state of North Carolina. That is actionable on several levels." "I know," I said, my voice flat. "That is why I need a shield before I can pick up a sword." Evelyn opened her laptop. She had already begun digitizing the years of loans I had recorded in my notebook. "We are going to reconstruct your financial history to the penny," she said. "If they claim you owe them money, or if they try to say the startup capital for Marigold House came from family funds, we will have a paper trail that goes back to your first paycheck at 19. We will prove that every cent in that restaurant is yours." I nodded. "Good. Now, let's talk about the offensive strategy." I spent the next 2 hours constructing a legal fortress. We drafted a formal document regarding the malicious tip to the health department. We attached the perfect inspection score and the inspector's notes about the unfounded nature of the complaint. We filed this officially with the county clerk. It was a preemptive strike. If Gordon or Logan tried to call in another fake tip, it would now look like harassment rather than a legitimate concern. It transformed their weapon into a liability. Then came the communication blockade. Arthur drafted a letter. It was cold, precise, and devoid of any emotion. It stated that all future communication between Gordon Watson, Logan Watson, and myself must go through my legal counsel. It explicitly forbade them from entering the premises of Marigold House. It was not a restraining order yet. We needed a bit more evidence for a judge to sign off on that, but it was a formal notice of trespass. If they stepped foot in my restaurant again, I could have them arrested without hesitation. I signed the letter with a pen that scratched satisfyingly against the paper. Send it via certified mail. I told Arthur, I want a signature required. I want proof they held it in their hands. By 11 in the morning. I was parking my car in front of the property management office. My landlord, Mr. Henderson, was a man of the old school. He believed in handshakes and eye contact. He had given me the lease on Marigold House because he liked my grit, not because I had the biggest bank account. I walked into his office. He looked up, surprised. Natalie. Everything okay with the building, Mr. Henderson? I said, sitting down across from him. The building is perfect, but I need to discuss a security matter. I did not give him the sob story. I did not tell him my father didn't love me. I spoke to him landlord to landlord. There is a possibility that a third party may attempt to contact you regarding my lease. I said, they may claim to represent me, or they may claim that there are legal issues with my business. I want you to know that I am the sole proprietor of Marigold House. No one else speaks for me, not my father, not my brother. Mr. Henderson frowned, his bushy white eyebrows knitting together. Is this the brother who tried to park his BMW in the loading zone last week? The very same, I said. He leaned forward. Natalie, if that boy tries to touch your lease, I will tell him to go kick rocks. You have paid your rent early for 6 months. You increased the property value with that renovation. As far as I am concerned, you are the best tenant on the block. I want it in writing. I said, I want an addendum stating that any changes to the lease require a notarized signature from me, done in your presence. Done, he said. I left his office feeling lighter. Gordon's plan to attack my lease had just hit a brick wall. By 1 in the afternoon, I was back at Marigold House. The lunch rush was over, and the team was prepping for dinner. The atmosphere was still tense from the health inspection, but I was about to change the energy. I walked to the point of sale terminal. I logged in as administrator. I changed the password. It had been Marigold 2023. A simple, hopeful password. I changed it to a random string of 18 characters that I had memorized on the drive over. Then I went to the Wi-Fi router. I changed the admin password. I kicked every device off the network and reconnected only the essential business hardware. Then I went to the security camera system. I changed the access codes. I saw a user log named G. Watson Remote in the access history. My blood ran cold. My father had logged into my cameras 3 times in the last week. He had been watching me. He had been watching my staff. I deleted the account. I enabled 2-factor authentication linked to a burner phone I had bought that morning, one they did not have the number for. The digital doors were locked. They were blind now. Then came the hardest part, the human element. I called a staff meeting at 3 o'clock. Everyone gathered in the dining room. Marcus, Sarah, Elena, the dishwashers, the servers. They looked nervous. They expected layoffs. They expected bad news about the reviews. I stood in front of them, not as a friend, but as a commander. There are going to be some changes in protocol, I announced. My voice did not waver. Effective immediately. No non-staff members are allowed in the kitchen, no exceptions, not vendors who are not vetted, and specifically, not my family. There was a ripple of confusion. Marcus looked at me, his eyes widening. My father, Gordon, and my brother, Logan, are no longer welcome at Marigold House. I continued. If they call, you do not give them information. You do not tell them how many covers we did. You do not tell them if I am here. You do not tell them the specials. If they walk through that front door, you treat them like any other customer. But if they cause a scene, you do not argue. You call the police. Sarah raised her hand timidly. Chef, what if they ask for you? You tell them I am unavailable, I said, and then you walk away. I looked at their faces. I saw shock, but I also saw relief. They had sensed the toxic energy my family brought. They had seen the way Gordon talked down to them. They had seen Logan treating the waitstaff like servants. By banning them, I wasn't just protecting myself, I was protecting my team. We are also implementing a new transparency policy, I said, shifting gears. The reviews online claim we are dirty. We are going to prove them wrong. From now on, the kitchen blinds stay open. We are going to live stream the prep hour on Instagram. We are going to show the world that we have nothing to hide. If they want to accuse us of having secrets, we will drown them in sunlight. The team straightened up. They liked a challenge. They liked showing off. Let's get to work, I said. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of tactical adjustments. I met with the bank manager and put a verbal password on my accounts, a code word that had to be spoken before any transfer could be authorized. I blocked my parents' numbers on my personal cell phone, but I kept the line active and archived the voicemails they had already left. 19 missed calls on opening night, 7 threatening texts this morning. I printed them all out. By 6 in the evening, the sun was setting, and the dinner service was beginning. I stood at the pass, looking out at the dining room. The best table for guests sign was still on table 4. It was occupied by a group of 4 women celebrating a birthday. They were laughing, drinking wine, eating the food I had designed. I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was the burner phone. It was a text from Arthur. The letters have been delivered. Your father refused to sign initially, but the process server insisted. They have been served. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The lines were drawn. The moat was dug. The drawbridge was pulled up. I walked into the office where Evelyn was finishing up for the day. She had a stack of papers on the desk. We found something interesting, she said, tapping a spreadsheet. In 2018, there was a withdrawal from a joint account you had with your mother. $3,000. It was marked as tuition assistance. I never took tuition assistance. I said, I paid for culinary school myself. Exactly. Evelyn said, the transfer went to a distinct account number. I traced it. It belongs to a sports betting website. I stared at the paper. They had stolen from me years ago, disguised it as help, and gambled it away. It is just a small thread, Evelyn said. But if we pull it, I think the whole sweater unravels. Keep pulling, I said. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Arthur. Be ready. Rats behave unpredictably when you block their hole. I looked at the screen, then at the bustling kitchen. Let them come, I thought. I typed a reply to Arthur, my fingers moving quickly over the glass. They will try to break in. I wrote, they will try to forage. They will leave a trace. Arthur replied, and what will we do when they do? I looked at the security monitor, at the empty street where Logan had stood watching me the night before. I knew they were out there. I knew they were reading the legal letter right now, their faces turning that shade of purple that meant they were losing control. They would not stop. They could not stop. Their debts were too high, and their egos were too fragile. They would try something illegal. They would have to. I typed my final response to Arthur. I will let them sign their own guilt. I put the phone down and tied my apron tighter. The tickets were printing. The machine was chattering. Order in. I shouted. Yes. Chef the brigade roared back. The kitchen was mine. The business was mine. And for the first time, the future was mine too. The chess pieces were set, and White had just made the first move. The dinner rush on Tuesday started with a deceptive sense of normalcy. After the chaos of the weekend and the frantic legal maneuvering of Monday, the kitchen felt like a well-oiled machine again. The open kitchen policy I had implemented to counter the bad reviews was working. Guests were craning their necks to watch us plate the braised short ribs and sear the scallops. The transparency was building trust. The dining room was 80% full, a respectable number for a weeknight. At 7:30 in the evening, the rhythm broke. It did not break with a crash or a shout. It broke with a beep. I was at the pass, wiping the rim of a bowl of lobster bisque, when Sarah, my head server, hurried over. She did not look right. Her face was flushed, and she was holding a credit card terminal in her hand as if it were a live grenade. Chef, she said, her voice tight. The machine is not working. Change the battery, I said, not looking up, or reset the Wi-Fi. I did. She said, It is not the connection. It is the card. It says declined. Try it again. I said, maybe the guest is over their limit. I tried 3 times. Chef, it is a Platinum Amex. The guest says he just used it an hour ago. I felt a small prickle of irritation. Technology was supposed to serve us, not slow us down. Try another terminal. I did. Sarah whispered. I tried all 3. None of them are processing. They all say issuer alert or merchant hold. The prickle of irritation turned into a cold spike of dread. I looked out into the dining room. At table 6, a well-dressed couple was looking impatient. At table 9, a group of businessmen was waving for the check. If we could not process payments, we were dead in the water. We were a cash flow business. If the money did not come in, the lights did not stay on. I stepped out of the kitchen. Keep cooking. I ordered the line. Do not stop. I walked to the main terminal at the hostess stand. I grabbed a card, my own personal debit card, and ran a test transaction for $1. The machine whirred. The little spinning wheel on the screen turned, and then a red box appeared. Transaction failed. Merchant account suspended. Contact support immediately. Suspended. The word hung there on the glowing screen, mocking me. I looked up. The dining room was full of people finishing their meals. In 20 minutes, 30 people would be trying to pay. If I had to tell them all that I could not take their cards, that I needed cash or Venmo like some roadside lemonade stand, the humiliation would be absolute. It would validate every fake review about us being unprofessional. I turned to Sarah. Go to every table that is asking for the check. Tell them our internet provider is down in the area. Apologize profusely. Ask if they can do cash. If not, offer to let them Zelle the business account directly and comp their desserts. But chef, Sarah said, her eyes wide. That looks so bad. I know, I hissed. Just do it. I ran to the office and slammed the door. My hands were shaking as I dialed the number for the merchant services provider. I had chosen this company because they promised 24-hour support. I sat on hold for 4 minutes. It felt like 4 years. I could hear the murmur of the dining room through the wall. I could imagine the awkward conversations happening at the tables, the frustration, the whispers. Can you believe this place? They can't even run a card. Finally, a voice answered. Merchant support. This is David. My account is frozen. I said, cutting off his greeting. I have a dining room full of people and I cannot process a single dime. Fix it. Let me pull up your file. Ms. Watson, David said calmly. One moment, I heard the clicking of keys. Ah, I see the issue, he said. We received a fraud alert regarding the beneficial ownership of Marigold House. The account has been placed on a temporary risk hold pending investigation. Fraud alert, I shouted. I am the sole owner. I opened this account myself. The notes here say that a dispute was filed by a partner claiming unauthorized use of corporate funds. David said, a Mr. Logan Watson contacted our risk department this afternoon. He provided a partial operating agreement claiming 50% equity and requested a freeze on the assets to prevent embezzlement. The room spun. Logan, they had not just gone after the lease. They had gone straight for the jugular. They knew that if I could not take money, I could not pay my staff on Friday. They knew that a cash-only sign in a fine dining restaurant was the kiss of death. He is lying, I said, my voice trembling with rage. He has no equity. He is not a partner. He is a con artist who is trying to extort me. I understand your frustration. Ms. Watson, David said, his voice robotic. But when there is a dispute between owners, we are required to freeze the funds until the legal ownership is clarified. It is federal regulation. How do I clarify it? I asked. You need to submit your articles of incorporation, your EIN letter, and a notarized affidavit of sole ownership. Once our legal team reviews it, we can lift the hold. How long does that take? Usually 3 to 5 business days. 3 to 5 days. I laughed. It was a dark, hysterical sound. If I went 5 days without revenue, I would miss payroll. My staff would walk. My vendors would cut me off. Marigold House would be a corpse before the weekend. That is unacceptable, I said. I will have my lawyer send you those documents within the hour. If that hold is not lifted by tomorrow morning, I am suing your company for damages and lost revenue." I hung up before he could reply. I immediately called Arthur. He answered on the second ring. "They froze the merchant account." I said, "Logan called them and claimed he is a partner." "I am on it," Arthur said instantly. His voice was sharp, professional. "I have the corporate binder on my desk. I will scan the operating agreement and email it to their legal department right now. I will threaten them with a tortious interference suit if they do not expedite this." "Natalie, listen to me. This is a crime. Filing a false report with a financial institution is fraud. He just crossed a federal line. Get it back on." "Arthur," I said, "just get it back on." I hung up and put my head in my hands. The office was dark, illuminated only by the blue light of the security monitors. I watched the dining room. I saw Sarah explaining something to the table of businessmen. I saw one of them look annoyed. He pulled out a wad of cash and threw it on the table. He did not leave a tip. I felt sick. They were suffocating me. They were cutting off the oxygen. I looked at the desk. In the chaos of the evening, I had not checked the mail. There was a small stack of envelopes sitting next to my laptop. I flipped through them. Electric bill, gas bill, a flyer for a wine distributor, and then a thick, red envelope. It was addressed to Logan Watson, but the address was Marigold House, 124 Oak Street. I frowned. Logan did not live here. He had never received mail here. I tore it open. It was not a friendly letter. It was a final demand notice from a company called Apex Capital Solutions. "Dear Mr. Watson, despite repeated attempts to collect on your outstanding balance of $78,400, payment has not been received. Per the terms of your agreement, failure to remit payment by December 12th will result in immediate asset seizure and legal action. We have noted your new business address for service of process." I stared at the letter. They had changed his mailing address to my restaurant. It was a threat. It was a message. "Your safe haven is now my battlefield." They were telling the sharks that this is where the money was. They were leading the wolves to my door. If a repo man showed up here during service to look for Logan, if a process server barged in screaming about debt, my hand crumpled the letter into a tight ball. I wanted to scream. I wanted to go to the gridiron tap and flip their table over. I wanted to smash every bottle of wine in my cellar, but I couldn't. I was the chef. I was the rock. I stood up. I smoothed out my apron. I took a deep breath, inhaling the smell of the office paper and stress. I walked back out onto the floor. The dinner rush was winding down. The damage was done. We had lost hundreds of dollars in tips because of the cash confusion. The staff looked exhausted and demoralized. Sarah was near tears. I walked up to the pass. "Listen up," I said quietly. The kitchen stopped. "I know tonight was rough," I said. "I know the system failure was embarrassing, but you handled it. You kept cooking. You kept serving. I am proud of you." I looked at Sarah. "Add 20% gratuity to every cash check we took tonight," I said. "I will pay it out of the safe. No one loses money tonight except me." The tension in their shoulders dropped. "Clean up," I said. "We open tomorrow at 5, and tomorrow, the system will work." I walked through the dining room, thanking the last few guests personally. I smiled. I apologized for the technical glitch. I played the role of the charming hostess. But inside, I was burning. When the last guest left and the door was locked, I went back to the office. I took the crumpled letter from the debt collector and smoothed it out on the desk. I placed it next to the note about the frozen merchant account. They were squeezing me. They were creating the crisis Gordon had talked about. They wanted me to panic. They wanted me to call them, crying, begging for them to make it stop. They wanted me to say, "Okay, you win. Sign whatever you want. Just make the pain go away." They wanted a surrender. I looked at the security camera feed. The street was empty. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. My thumb hovered over my father's contact. I had blocked him, but I could still text him. If I fought them legally, it would take days. The merchant account might take a week to fully unlock. The debt collectors would keep coming. The harassment would continue. I needed to end this. Now. I needed them in the room. I needed them to say it to my face. I needed them to incriminate themselves so thoroughly that no lawyer on earth could save them. I typed a message. I made my fingers shake as I typed it, imagining the typos of a broken woman. Dad, please. The bank frozen my money. I can't pay the staff. I have debt collectors calling the restaurant. I can't do this anymore. You win. I'm drowning. I stared at the message. It was the perfect bait. It fed his ego. It confirmed his narrative that I was weak, that I needed him, that the stable daughter had finally collapsed under the weight of the big, scary world. I sent it. Then I sent a second one. Can you come over tomorrow night after service? I need help fixing this. I'll sign the papers for Logan's company if you can get the bank to release my funds. The response came in 30 seconds. We will be there. 11 p.m. Have the notary ready. We are doing this as a family. I put the phone down. They took the bait. They were coming. They were coming to collect their prize. They thought they were walking into a surrender ceremony. I looked around my office. I looked at the framed first dollar I had ever earned. I looked at the picture of the empty building before I had transformed it. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small, high-definition camera I had bought on Monday. It was no bigger than a matchbox. I placed it on the bookshelf, nestled between a copy of The Joy of Cooking and Larousse Gastronomique. The lens was invisible in the shadows, but it had a perfect view of the desk and the two chairs in front of it. I pulled out my phone and tested the angle. Perfect. It captured the entire room. It would capture their faces. It would capture their voices. It would capture every lie they told and every threat they made. I checked the audio levels. Crystal clear. I sat down in my chair, the chair they wanted to kick me out of. I picked up the crumpled debt letter and the notice of the frozen account. I placed them in the center of the desk, like props on a stage. Come on then, I whispered to the empty room. My voice was low, dangerous. It wasn't the voice of a victim. It was the voice of a predator waiting in the tall grass. Come and get your money. Come and get your signature. I turned off the office light, leaving only the blinking red eye of the recording indicator on the hidden camera. Tomorrow night, the family would be reunited, and I would serve them a meal they would never forget. Wednesday morning broke with a deceptive stillness. The trap was set for 11 o'clock that night. My father and brother believed they were coming to accept my surrender. They believed I was broken, drowning in the financial chaos they had orchestrated with the frozen merchant account and the debt collectors. They were expecting a weeping daughter ready to sign over her life's work just to make the pain stop. I was not weeping. I was investigating. I had closed the restaurant for lunch service, claiming a maintenance issue to the public. In reality, the maintenance was happening inside my financial history. The office of Marigold House had turned into a war room. Evelyn, the forensic accountant, had been working for 16 hours straight. Her eyes were red, but her focus was absolute. She was tracing the spiderweb of small, seemingly insignificant transactions that had occurred over the last decade of my life. At 10 in the morning, Evelyn stopped typing. She did not say a word. She just turned her laptop screen toward me. I was sitting on the edge of the desk, sipping cold espresso. What is it? I asked. I found a loose thread, Evelyn said, her voice raspy. You told me you never co-signed a loan for Logan. You were adamant about that. I never did, I said. I refused every single time. That was the cause of half our arguments. Then you need to explain this, she said. She pointed to a line on a credit report from a secondary bureau, one of the smaller agencies that landlords and predatory lenders use. It was not Equifax or TransUnion. It was a niche agency that tracked high-risk liabilities. There, buried in the history from 3 years ago, was a hard inquiry and an opened line of credit. Borrower Logan Watson, co-borrower Natalie Watson, collateral future business assets, personal guarantee, status defaulted, charged off, amount $40,000. I stared at the screen. The room felt suddenly very small. That is impossible, I said. I did not sign that. I was working as a sous chef at the Blue Heron 3 years ago. I did not even have business assets to pledge. The date? Evelyn said, pointing a manicured nail at the screen. Look at the date of the application. June 14th, 2022. I closed my eyes, searching my memory. June 14th. Where was I? I opened my eyes. I was in the hospital, I said. I had burned my arm badly on a fryer splash. I was under sedation for a debridement procedure. I was in the hospital for 2 days. And who had access to your apartment while you were in the hospital? Evelyn asked. My mother, I whispered. She came to feed my cat. She had my keys. She had access to my desk, my social security card, my old tax returns. A cold nausea rose in my throat. It was not the kind of nausea you get from bad food. It was the nausea of betrayal. They stole my identity, I said. It was not a question. We need the source document, Arthur said from the corner of the room. He had been reviewing the merchant account freeze. If that loan exists, there is a piece of paper with your signature on it, and if you were in the hospital, you could not have signed it. I sat down at my computer. My hands were trembling, but my mind was razor sharp. I logged into my old email archive. I searched for insurance and trust. Gordon was a hoarder of digital paperwork. He often sent me drafts of things he wanted me to sign, trying to wear me down. I found an email from June 10th, 2022, 4 days before the loan application. Subject Family Protection Plan. Please sign. Attachment Watson Family Trust Guarantee, PDF. The body of the email read, Natalie, stop being stubborn. This just protects all of us in case of an emergency. It helps Logan get his start, and it builds your credit history. Sign it and leave it on your desk for Mom to pick up. I remembered this email. I had replied with one word, no. I opened the attachment. It was a dense legal document. Buried on page 4, in fine print, was a clause. The undersigned guarantor pledges all current and future business equity, inclusive of any sole proprietorships or LLCs formed within the next 10 years, as collateral for the debts of the primary borrower. They had tried to get me to sign a death warrant for a business I hadn't even started yet. I never signed this, I said. I remember deleting it. But someone signed it, Arthur said. Can we access the lender's portal? The debt collector letter, I said, remembering the crumpled red ball of paper from yesterday. It had a reference number. I grabbed the letter. I went to the website of Apex Capital Solutions. I typed in the reference number and the last 4 digits of Logan's social security number, which I knew by heart from years of filling out his bail forms. The portal opened. There it was, the master promissory note. I clicked View Document. The PDF loaded slowly, pixel by pixel. I scrolled to the signature page. My breath stopped. There was my name, Natalie Watson. It was written in blue ink. It had the loops and the slant of my handwriting. To a stranger. It looked authentic, but I saw the tell. I crossed my T's from left to right, with a slight upward angle. The signature on the screen crossed the T straight across, heavy and flat. That was how Gordon crossed his T's. He forged it, I said. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He waited until I was sedated in a hospital bed. He went into my apartment. He took my personal information, and he sat at my kitchen table and practiced my signature until he got it close enough to fool a loan officer who didn't care to check. He did not just forge a loan document, Arthur said, leaning over my shoulder. Read the collateral clause again. I read it. Inclusive of any sole proprietorships or LLCs formed within the next 10 years. That is why they are here, Arthur said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Natalie, do you understand? This isn't about $75,000. They don't just want cash. I stared at the screen. The pieces of the puzzle slammed together with a deafening click. They own the restaurant, I said. According to this fake paper, Marigold House is already theirs. It is the collateral for the $40,000 Logan blew 3 years ago, plus the interest, plus the penalties. The grand opening, Evelyn said softly. The abandonment. It was a trigger, I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. They didn't skip the opening because they were busy. They skipped it because they were waiting for the valuation to hit. They let me build it. They let me work 18-hour days. They let me paint the walls and hire the staff, and the moment it became a viable asset. They decided to foreclose, Arthur finished. The demand for $75,000 the other day, that was just theater. They knew you would say no. They wanted you to say no, because if you refused to pay, they could go to this predatory lender, show them this forged document, and say, "Look, she has a restaurant. Go take that." The horror of it was absolute. It was not just greed. It was farming. They had farmed me. They had planted me like a seed, watered me with neglect, waited for me to grow into a cash cow, and now they were here to butcher me. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mia. She was somewhere in Ohio by now. I remembered something else. The text read, "Back when Logan got that loan in 2022, he was laughing about it. He told me, 'Dad has a magic pen. He can sign anything if he practices enough.'" I thought he meant Dad was co-signing. I didn't know he meant forgery. I looked at the text. Then I looked at the signature on the screen. "This is a felony," Arthur said. "First-degree forgery, identity theft, wire fraud because the loan was processed electronically, and since the lender is across state lines, it is federal." "And the merchant account freeze?" I asked. "That was them flexing the muscle," Arthur said. "They used this forged document to prove they had a claim on your business. That is how they got the bank to listen." I stood up. I walked to the window. The street outside was calm. People were walking their dogs. Life was normal. But inside Marigold House, the world had shifted on its axis. I was no longer fighting my family. I was fighting criminals who happened to share my DNA. "I am not signing a settlement," I said, turning back to Arthur. "I am not signing a peace treaty." "No," Arthur said. "You are not." "I want to file charges," I said. "I want to file everything. I want the police here. I want the FBI here." "If we call them now," Arthur warned, "Gordon and Logan will see the cruisers and run. They will destroy evidence. They will claim it was a misunderstanding. They will say you gave verbal permission." "I know," I said. "That is why we wait." I looked at the clock. It was 4 p.m, 7 hours until the meeting. "We stick to the plan," I said. "Let them come tonight. Let them bring the papers they want me to sign. Let them admit on camera that they set this whole thing up. I want them to say it. I want Gordon to look me in the eye and tell me he owns my restaurant because he forged my name while I was lying in a hospital bed." "That is risky, Natalie," Evelyn said. "If they realize you know." "They won't," I said, "because they think I am stupid. They think I am the stable, boring girl who cooks the food and pays the bills. They don't think I am capable of checking a credit report from 3 years ago." I walked over to the printer. I printed the forged document. The ink was still warm. I folded it and put it in the pocket of my apron. It felt heavy, like a stone. "Arthur," I said, "prepare the affidavit for the police. I will sign it now. But do not file it until midnight." "Why midnight?" "Because by midnight," I said, "I will have their confession." I sat down at the desk and took the pen Arthur handed me. I signed the criminal complaint. My signature was sharp, angular, and nothing like the flat, lazy scrawl Gordon had used. "One more thing," I said. "I need a private investigator on standby. I want to know where they are right now." Arthur made a call. 10 minutes later, we had a location. They were at the Gridiron Tap, again. "They are celebrating," I said, looking at the GPS dot on Arthur's phone. "They think they have already won. They are drinking beers paid for with money they expect to squeeze out of me tonight." I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was the same calm I felt right before a dinner rush, the moment when the prep is done and there is nothing left to do but execute. "They don't love me," I said, repeating the thought that had been haunting me all day. "They don't even hate me. To hate someone, you have to see them as a person. To them, I am just an appliance. I am a toaster that stopped working, and they are coming to kick it until it pops." I looked at Arthur and Evelyn. "Go home," I said. "Get some rest. I need you fresh for the legal fallout tomorrow." "You want us to leave you alone with them?" Evelyn asked. concerned. "I won't be alone," I said, glancing at the hidden camera on the bookshelf. "And besides, I have my knives. They left at 5. I unlocked the front door for the dinner service. I worked the line that night with a terrifying precision. I seared steaks. I reduced sauces. I garnered plates with tweezers. I moved through the kitchen like a ghost. Every time I looked at the clock, the hands had moved closer to 11. At 10:30, the last guest left. I sent the staff home. I told them not to worry about the cleanup. I told them I needed some time alone to think about the menu. They left, casting worried glances at me. They knew something was wrong, but they didn't know they were walking out of a crime scene and leaving the victim behind to turn the tables. At 10:50, I locked the front door. I went to the office. I turned on the hidden camera. I checked the angle one last time. I sat down at the desk. I put the crumpled debt letter in the center. I put the forged loan document underneath it, hidden from view. I waited. At 10:58, headlights swept across the front window. A car door slammed, then another. They were early. I heard the heavy thud of a fist on the glass door. I did not get up to let them in immediately. I let them knock. I let them wait in the cold for a minute. "Open up, Natalie." Gordon's voice was muffled by the glass. "We know you are in there." I stood up. I smoothed my apron. I checked my reflection in the darkened window. The girl who wanted a family was gone. The woman who owned the building was ready. I walked to the door and unlocked it. Gordon and Logan pushed past me without a word. They brought the smell of rain and arrogance into my dining room. Logan was carrying a leather portfolio. Gordon was carrying a bottle of champagne. "Champagne?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "For the celebration," Gordon said, grinning. "We are going to fix this mess, Natalie. We are going to make everything right." "Yes," I said, closing the door and locking it behind them. "We certainly are." I followed them to the office. They walked in like they owned it. Gordon sat in my chair. Logan sat on the corner of the desk, swinging his legs. "So," Gordon said, placing the champagne on the desk right next to the debt letter. "Ready to sign?" I stood in the doorway, blocking the exit. "I am ready," I said. "But first, we need to talk about June 14th, 2022. Gordon's smile didn't falter, but his eyes went still. "What about it?" "I was in the hospital," I said. "And you were at my kitchen table." The room went deadly silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint whir of the hidden camera recording every frame. "I don't know what you're talking about," Gordon said, but his hand moved instinctively to his tie, loosening it. "I think you do," I said. "And I think we should skip the champagne." I walked into the room and sat in the guest chair, forcing Gordon to look at me from my own seat. "Let's make a deal," I said. "You tell me the truth, and maybe I let you walk out of here." It was a lie, of course. They were never walking out of here free men, but they didn't know that yet. The trap was sprung. Now, I just had to watch them struggle. The conference room at the Briar Glen Municipal Center smelled of lemon pledge and bureaucracy. It was a sterile, windowless box with a long oak table that had seen better days, illuminated by fluorescent lights that hummed with a low, headache-inducing frequency. It was 10 o'clock on Thursday morning. This was their last stand. After the confrontation in my office the night before where I had recorded them but let them leave, giving them just enough rope to hang themselves, Gordon and Logan had panicked. They realized they could not bully me into signing. So, they tried to burn the building down legally. They had filed an emergency petition with the Briar Glen Business Licensing Board, claiming gross financial mismanagement and imminent insolvency regarding Marigold House. They cited the frozen merchant account which they had caused as proof that I was unfit to operate a business that served the public. It was a desperate, scorched earth tactic. If the board suspended my license pending an investigation, I would be closed for weeks. The cash flow would die. The loan sharks would circle. Gordon hoped that in the chaos, I would beg him to take over as a trustee to save the family name. They walked in like they were attending a coronation. Gordon wore his navy power suit, the one with the silk pocket square. He carried a thick leather briefcase. Logan walked a step behind him, wearing a blazer over a t-shirt, trying to look like a misunderstood Silicon Valley genius. They did not look at me. They looked at the 3 board members sitting at the head of the table with the confidence of men who believe the world is rigged in their favor. They did not know they were walking into an autopsy. I sat on the left side of the room. I did not come alone. To my right sat Arthur, my lawyer, his face a mask of stone. Next to him was Mr. Henderson, my landlord, wearing his best tweed jacket and looking furious that his morning golf game had been interrupted by nonsense. Next to him was Sarah, my head server, holding a stack of affidavits from the staff, and sitting quietly in the back row, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, was Mia, the board chair. A stern woman named Mrs. Higgins, with glasses on a chain, tapped her gavel. "We are here to review the emergency petition filed by Mr. Gordon Watson regarding the licensure of Marigold House," she said. Her voice was dry. "Mr. Watson, you have the floor." Gordon stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He put on his sad, paternal face. "Madam Chair," he began, his voice dripping with false sorrow, "this is not easy for me. No father wants to stand against his daughter. But I have a duty to the community and to the creditors. Natalie is spirited. She is a wonderful cook, but she is not a business owner. She is mentally fragile. The restaurant is hemorrhaging money. The accounts are frozen. We believe she is being misled by bad advisors and is on the verge of a breakdown that could endanger public safety." He paused for effect. "We are simply asking for a temporary suspension of the operating license so that a court-appointed trustee myself can step in, audit the books, and stabilize the situation. We want to save Marigold House, not close it." Logan nodded solemnly beside him, tapping on an iPad as if he were running complex calculations. Mrs. Higgins looked at me. "Ms. Watson?" "Your response?" I stood up. I did not button a jacket. I smoothed my hands over the table. I did not look fragile. "Madam Chair," I said, "my father is a very good storyteller, but the Department of Licensing deals in facts, not fiction, and the fact is, this petition is not an act of concern. It is the final step in a coordinated campaign of harassment, fraud, and extortion designed to steal my business to pay off my brother's gambling debts." Gordon scoffed loud enough for the room to hear. "That is absurd. Paranoia. See, I told you she was unstable. I have brought evidence," I said. "And I have brought witnesses." Arthur stood up and handed a thick binder to each of the 3 board members. "Tab 1, I said, "the financial health of Marigold House. You will see bank statements certified this morning showing a positive cash flow, all vendor payments made on time or early, and a rent status of paid in full for the next 2 months. Mr. Henderson leaned forward. "I can verify that," he boomed. "Natalie Watson is the best tenant I have. These 2 jokers tried to trick me into breaking her lease 3 days ago. I threw them out of my office." Gordon stiffened. He hadn't expected Henderson to be there. "Tab 2, I continued. "The frozen accounts Mr. Watson mentioned. You will see an email from the Merchant Services Legal Department, time-stamped 2 hours ago. They have admitted the freeze was triggered by a fraudulent claim of partnership filed by Logan Watson. They have lifted the freeze and apologized. Logan Watson owns 0% of Marigold House. He is not on the deed. He is not on the LLC. He is a stranger to this business." Logan stopped tapping on his iPad. He looked down at his shoes. "Tab 3, I said, my voice rising slightly. "The public safety concern. This is a log of 20 fake 1-star reviews posted from the same IP address range in a single night. And here is the official report from the health inspector, confirming that the tip calling for an inspection last Friday was malicious and unfounded. My kitchen scored a 100. I looked at Gordon. He was starting to sweat. The air conditioning was on, but beads of perspiration were forming on his forehead. "This is all circumstantial," Gordon sputtered. "So we made a few calls. We were worried. We wanted to see if she was up to code. I would like to call a witness," I said. I turned to the back of the room. "Mia." Gordon and Logan spun around in their chairs. When they saw Mia, The color drained from their faces so fast it looked like a magic trick. Logan actually made a small, high-pitched noise in his throat. Mia walked to the front. She did not look at them. She looked at the board. "State your name," Mrs. Higgins said. "Mia Daniels," she said. Her voice was shaking, but she held her ground. "I was the girlfriend of Logan Watson until yesterday." "Ms. Daniels, can you tell us about the investors Mr. Watson claimed to have?" Arthur asked. "There are no investors," Mia said clearly. "Logan owes $75,000 to an illegal lending group operating out of a shell company in New Jersey. They threatened to hurt him if he did not pay by next Tuesday. Gordon and Logan concocted a plan to take over Marigold House so they could use its assets as collateral to satisfy the loan sharks. I was present when they discussed it. I saw the fake documents they created." "She is lying," Logan shouted, jumping up. "She is a crazy ex. She is jealous." "Sit down, Mr. Watson," Mrs. Higgins snapped, "or I will have you removed." Logan sat down, but his hands were shaking violently. "I have one final piece of evidence," I said. "Tab 4. Arthur placed a small speaker on the table. He connected it to his laptop. "This was recorded 2 nights ago," I said. "In my father's car." I pressed play. Gordon's voice filled the room, loud and clear. "If she is not scared of the health department, then we hit the structural points. The bank, the liquor license, the landlord. We do not need her to give us the money anymore. We need to create a situation where she has to bring us in to save her." The board members stopped reading the binders. They stared at the speaker. "I want to discipline her." The recording continued. "She forgot who made her. We provided the roof over her head. We are just collecting the rent that is due." I stopped the recording. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. Mrs. Higgins took off her glasses. She looked at Gordon with an expression of pure disgust. "Mr. Watson," she said, "is that your voice?" Gordon stood up. His face was purple. The mask of the concerned father had disintegrated, leaving only the tyrant underneath. "You do not understand," he shouted, pointing a trembling finger at me. "That recording is out of context. It is a private family conversation. She illegally recorded us. This is entrapment." "It is an admission of conspiracy to commit fraud," Arthur said calmly. "It is my money," Gordon roared, losing all control. "I raised her. I fed her. That restaurant belongs to me because she belongs to me. She is nothing. She is a cook, a glorified servant. Who do you think you are listening to? She flips burgers. I am a businessman." He slammed his hand on the table. "You cannot deny me my property because of some technicality. Marigold House is a family asset." "The restaurant," I said, my voice cutting through his shouting like a knife through hot butter, "is a separate legal entity, and I am the only name on the paper. The only paper you have, Dad, is the one you forged." I pulled the folded document from my pocket, the one with the fake signature from 3 years ago, and placed it on the table. "Exhibit E," I said. "A loan application from 2022, signed by Natalie Watson while Natalie Watson was sedated in a hospital bed. This is the document they used to claim ownership to the bank. This is the foundation of their entire claim." Mrs. Higgins picked up the paper. She looked at it. She looked at the affidavit from the hospital Arthur had provided. She looked at Gordon. "This hearing is over," Mrs. Higgins said. She did not bang the gavel. She placed it down gently, as if the situation was too grave for noise. "We are dismissing the petition to suspend the license of Marigold House," she stated. "The license remains in good standing." Gordon let out a breath, thinking he had escaped with just a dismissal. "However," Mrs. Higgins continued, her eyes hard, "given the evidence presented here regarding fraud, identity theft, and extortion, this board is legally obligated to refer this matter to the district attorney's office. We are also forwarding the transcript of this hearing and the audio evidence to the state attorney general." Gordon froze. His mouth hung open. "The district attorney," Logan whispered. "Dad, that is criminal court." "You cannot do that," Gordon whispered. This is a civil matter. It is a family matter. Not anymore, Mrs. Higgins said. Officers. Two security guards who had been standing by the door stepped forward. Please escort Mr. Gordon Watson and Mr. Logan Watson from the building, Mrs. Higgins said, and ensure they do not approach the petitioner. Gordon looked at me. For the first time in my life, I saw true fear in his eyes. He wasn't looking at his daughter. He was looking at the witness who was about to put him in prison. Natalie, he pleaded, his voice cracking. Natalie, tell them. Tell them we were just trying to help. Tell them it is a misunderstanding. Do not let them do this to your father. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had abandoned me on my opening night. I looked at the man who had called me the help. I looked at the man who had forged my name and stolen my credit. I have nothing to say to you, I said. My lawyer will handle all future communication. I turned my back on him. Let's go. Arthur, I said. I have a lunch service to prep for. I walked out of the conference room. I heard Gordon shouting my name behind me, a desperate, wailing sound that echoed down the hallway. I heard Logan sobbing, asking if he was going to jail. I did not look back. Mr. Henderson walked beside me, chuckling. That was the most satisfying meeting I have attended in 30 years, he said. You have ice in your veins, kid. No, I said, pushing open the heavy double doors of the municipal center and stepping out into the bright, clean sunlight. I just have a very clear recipe for what I want. I took a deep breath of fresh air. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like freedom. Arthur put his hand on my shoulder. The DA will likely issue arrest warrants by tomorrow, he said. Especially with the forgery evidence. They are done. Natalie, they are buried. Good, I said. Then let's make sure the dirt is packed down tight. I checked my watch. It was 11:30. If I hurried, I could be back at Marigold House in time to taste the soup before the doors opened. The nightmare was over. The pests had been exterminated. Now, all that was left was to run my restaurant, and for the first time, the reserved sign on my life didn't have anyone else's name on it but mine. Friday night at Marigold House is not just a dinner service. It is a performance. It is a high-wire act performed without a net, where the balance is maintained by the synchronization of 12 people moving in a space no larger than a 2-car garage. By 7 in the evening, the dining room was a sea of noise and motion. The amber lights reflected off the wine glasses, creating a constellation of artificial stars. The jazz playlist I had curated with such care was now just a rhythmic undercurrent to the real soundtrack of the restaurant, the clatter of silver against china, the pop of corks, and the low, steady roar of satisfied conversation. I was at the pass, garnishing a plate of duck confit with a microgreen salad. My tweezers moved with the precision of a surgeon. Order in, the ticket machine chattered. Walking in, I replied, my voice cutting through the steam. 2 ribeyes, medium rare, 1 risotto, 1 sea bass. Let's go. Yes, chef, the brigade shouted back. It was perfect. It was the dream I had held in my heart for 15 years while scrubbing pots and chopping onions in other people's basements. Then, I saw the hostess, Sarah, stiffen. She was standing at the front desk, looking through the glass of the double doors. Her smile, usually bright and genuine, faltered and died. She looked back at me, her eyes wide with a specific kind of panic I had not seen since the night of the health inspection. I knew who was at the door before I even wiped my hands. I did not stop the line. The kitchen does not stop for anything less than fire or blood. Marcus, take the pass, I said calmly. Heard, chef, Marcus said, stepping into my spot without missing a beat. I walked out of the kitchen. I did not run. I walked with the steady, heavy tread of a woman who owns the floor she walks on. I crossed the dining room, nodding to a regular at table 4, the table that was once reserved for family, and was now occupied by a local food critic who was eating my scallops with her eyes closed in delight. I reached the front vestibule just as the door opened. They brought the cold wind with them. Gordon and Logan stood there. They looked nothing like the confident men who had stormed the municipal hearing the day before. Gordon's suit was wrinkled, his tie crooked. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 24 hours. Logan looked worse. He was pale, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal, sweat beading on his upper lip despite the December chill. They tried to step further into the restaurant, into the warmth. I stepped in front of them. I blocked the path. "Table for two?" I asked. My voice was pleasant, professional, and cold as liquid nitrogen. "I am afraid we are fully booked for the next 3 weeks. "Natalie," Gordon said. His voice was a rasp. He tried to smile, but it looked like a grimace. "Please, we need to talk. Not as lawyers, just as family, just for 5 minutes." "I have guests eating," I said. "I cannot have a disturbance." "We won't disturb anyone," Logan pleaded. His voice was high and thin. "We just need to explain. The hearing yesterday, it got out of hand. We didn't mean for it to go that far." "You filed a petition to revoke my license," I said. "You accused me of fraud. You tried to shut me down." "It was a strategy," Gordon hissed, leaning in close. "It was just business leverage. We were desperate. Nat, you have to understand. The pressure these people Logan owes, they are not reasonable men. They are calling the house. They are threatening your mother." "That sounds like a police matter," I said, "not a restaurant matter." "We can fix this," Gordon said. Reaching into his pocket, I tensed, but he only pulled out a handkerchief to wipe his forehead. "Look, I will drop the claims. I will sign whatever you want. I will sign a statement saying the loan from 3 years ago was a mistake. Just call off the dogs. Call off the district attorney. Tell them you do not want to press charges." He was bargaining. He was standing on the edge of a cliff, trying to negotiate with gravity. "I cannot do that," I said. "Yes, you can," Logan cried out. He tried to push past me, his eyes fixed on the dining room as if he expected to find a sanctuary there. "You are the victim. If you say it was a misunderstanding, they will drop the case. Tell them I had permission. Tell them you told me to sign it." I held up a hand. It was a stop sign. "Sarah," I said, without looking away from them. "Bring the envelope." Sarah, who had been standing guard by the hostess stand, handed me a thick, white legal envelope. I had prepared it that morning with Arthur. I held it out to Gordon. "What is this?" he asked, staring at it. "It is a gift," I said. "Open it." He took it with shaking hands. He tore the flap. He pulled out the papers. He read the first page. His face went from red to gray. "A restraining order," he whispered. "A permanent order of protection." "Keep reading," I said. He flipped the page. "Notice of representation," he read. "And a copy of the criminal referral from the licensing board." "The investigation is out of my hands, Dad," I said. "Once the board handed the evidence of forgery and identity theft to the state prosecutor, it became a crime against the state. I am just a witness now. I couldn't stop it even if I wanted to." "You did this," Gordon snarled. The pathetic mask fell away. The anger returned, the entitlement that had fueled him for decades. "You vindictive little—" "I did nothing," I said. "I cooked food. I served guests. I paid my bills. You did this. You forged the signature. You filed the false report. You hired the bot farm for the reviews. I just turned on the lights so everyone could see." "I am your father," he shouted. Heads turned in the dining room. The jazz music seemed to stop. "Keep your voice down," I said, "or I will have you removed." "You will have me removed." Gordon laughed. A manic, broken sound. "I own you. I made you. You think you are some big shot because you have a restaurant. It is nothing. It is a kitchen. You are a servant." He stepped forward, raising his hand. He wasn't going to hit me. He was too cowardly for that in public, but he wanted to intimidate me. He wanted me to flinch. I did not flinch. "Security," I said. 2 large men in black suits stepped out from the shadows of the coat check room. I had hired them on Thursday. They moved fast. One of them stepped between me and Gordon. The other moved toward Logan. "Sir, "You are trespassing," the guard said. "You need to leave the premises immediately." "Do not touch me," Gordon yelled. "This is my daughter's place. I have rights." "No," I said. "You have a restraining order, which you just violated." Logan looked at the guards, then at me. He was shaking so hard his teeth were chattering. "Natalie, please," Logan cried. "They are going to arrest us." The guy from the payment processor, he said he has to talk to the FBI because of the interstate wire fraud. I only called him because Dad told me to. I only told him to freeze the account because Dad said it would make you panic. The dining room had gone silent. Everyone heard it. "You admit it?" I asked. "You admit you called the processor to freeze my funds?" Yes, Logan sobbed. "I admit it. Just tell them not to send me to jail. I will pay you back. I will do anything." I looked at the security camera in the corner of the vestibule. The red light was blinking. "Thank you, Logan," I said softly. That was the last piece of the puzzle. Sirens wailed in the distance. They were getting louder. "You called them?" Gordon stared at me, betrayal written all over his face. "You called the police on your own blood." "I called the police on 2 men who are trespassing and harassing a business owner." I said, "The fact that we share a last name is just a genetic coincidence." The blue and red lights flashed against the front window, washing over the white tablecloths inside. 2 uniformed officers walked in. They knew the situation. Arthur had briefed the precinct captain that morning. "Gordon Watson, Logan Watson," the officer asked. "This is a mistake," Gordon stammered, backing away. "We were just leaving. We have a warrant for your arrest regarding identity theft and first-degree forgery," the officer said, taking out his handcuffs. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back." I watched as my father was handcuffed. He looked small. He looked old. He looked at me one last time, waiting for me to intervene, waiting for the stable daughter to rush in and fix it. I stood still. My arms were crossed over my chef's coat. They walked Logan out next. He was weeping openly, begging the officer to be careful with his wrists. The door swung shut behind them. The sirens faded as the cruisers drove away. The vestibule was quiet. I turned around. The entire restaurant was looking at me. The critic at table 4 had her napkin in her hand, staring. I took a deep breath. I smoothed my apron. "My apologies for the interruption. Everyone," I said. My voice was steady. It carried to the back of the room. "We had a small issue with unauthorized solicitations. It has been resolved." I looked at the hostess. "Sarah, check on table 7. They need water." Then I walked back to the kitchen. As I pushed through the swinging doors, I heard it. Applause. It started with one person, then another. It was not polite applause. It was loud. Supportive, rhythmic applause. It washed over me, warm and validating. I walked to the pass. Marcus was there, holding a ladle. He looked at me with a mixture of awe and respect. "You okay, chef?" he asked. "I am fine, Marcus," I said, and I meant it. I looked at the ticket machine. It had printed 3 new orders while I was gone. "Order in," I said. 2 lamb shanks. 1 gnocchi. 1 salmon. Let's cook." The kitchen exploded back into motion. The rhythm returned. The heartbeat of Marigold House was strong, steady, and entirely mine. 3 days later, the review came out in the Sunday paper. It was the lead feature in the lifestyle section. The headline read, "Marigold House, where the food is as uncompromising as the chef." The critic wrote about the risotto. She wrote about the perfect sear on the scallops. But the last paragraph was the one I cut out and framed. "In a world of corporate chains and soulless franchises, Natalie Watson has built something that feels like home. But do not mistake her hospitality for weakness. I witnessed Ms. Watson defend her creation with the ferocity of a lioness protecting her cubs. The food at Marigold House tastes like victory. It tastes like someone who knows exactly who she is and what she is worth. This is not just a restaurant. It is a fortress of excellence." I hung the framed review in the office, right next to the empty space on the wall where a family photo might have gone. It was late. The restaurant was closed. The staff was having a shift drink at the bar. They were laughing. Marcus was telling a joke. Sarah was showing Elena a video on her phone. I stood in the doorway, watching them, for years. I had chased the approval of people who saw me as a resource, not a person. I had let them drain me because I thought that was the price of belonging. I thought family was the people you were stuck with. I looked at my team. I looked at the people who had stood by me when the reviews tanked, who had worked double shifts when the money was tight, who had applauded me when I stood my ground. Gordon and Logan were currently out on bail, awaiting a trial that would likely end in prison time. They were drowning in legal fees. They were alone. I walked over to the bar. "Pour me a glass, Marcus," I said. "Coming right up, chef," he smiled. I took the glass. I looked at them. "To family," I said. They raised their glasses. "To family," I took a sip. The wine was robust, complex, and lingered on the palate. It tasted like the future. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a journey of fire, food, and freedom. I would love to hear your thoughts. Comment below and tell me where you are listening from. And if you have ever had to draw a hard line with toxic family members, please remember to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button so this story can reach even more people who need to hear it. Stay strong and keep cooking.